Hi, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. Hi, Fabian.
Hi, Kishin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Are you busy?
Yeah, with you right now, so I'm happy.
Mm. Okay, so I have a request to talk about um, the inner chatter, or you could say self-commentary or self-chatter or earworms, right? Um, so our it's pretty much like everything else, right? So what we focus our attention on, that pattern we feed, right? So, and what we feed is what we're going to be feeling and thinking and generating a mindset. So
Mhm.
that's applicable with everything. So if if we identify and come back to self-awareness again and come back to mindfulness of our body, and we realize that um, we are generating this negative mindset, we have these uncomfortable feelings, and we found and we relax our body, but then we check with our mind, we realize that we have these quite uh, critical self chatter, meaning like calling ourselves failure, calling ourselves worthless, calling ourselves fat, stupid. It might be that we've been conditioned to think ourselves like that in the past. Somebody must have conditioned us like that, but we are not. We are not finding blame here. We are dealing with what's in our control, and that is what is happening now in the present, right? So we realize that we are in this negative labeling, because labeling and perceiving ourselves is so important because we generate a reality. Uh, but we can go to the psychoanalysis of why we do that, and you can say our identity, attention seeking, but um, it's not the focus of the techniques today, right? The techniques today is to be aware with what's going on in our body, feeling, and our mind, and shift our focus, shift our perception. Because when we shift the old pattern, the pattern that we want um, to move away from or to shift from, is not being fed, right? So you got to understand, we can't stop our thinking, right? We don't have that ability. But what we can stop is not focus on it. And so that pattern is weakened.
Mhm.
And in time, it will stop itself. So the only thing that is in our ability is to shift our focus, but to shift our awareness, right? So if we find ourselves, say, earworm, a song, a quite negative song, keep playing in our head for some reason, right? Um, and what do, right? We know, first, we got to be aware that it's there. Number two, we got to accept that it is there, and what we're going to do about it, right? There's many techniques that we can do about it. Number one, we can focus, shift our focus, play a different song, right? Um, or shift to something that is in the present that can replace the music, right? So the music of the bird, right? The music of the wind, the music of the ocean, right? Replace the nature music with the music in our mind. That's one, so that you can replace. And many people have many techniques. Like one person was able to stop mid-sentence, right? Say the song was playing, and he's able to interrupt it, stop it, and it keep playing, and he will stop it. So making it pause to the point where it comes to a stop. And but what we have to be aware of is that resisting, right, is feeding it. The more we resist, right, because you got to understand where is our awareness. When we resist, our awareness is still on it. So there is a twofold. Our resistance is generating quite a negativity, and then our feeding it, by focusing on it, we still keep it going. So we keep resisting even more, to the point where both feeding each other and spiral out of control. But it also coming back to our attitude. Right. So what are we having the relationship with the external world, right? So external world, there are things that we have to learn to accept and tolerate. For example, we meditate and we hear people arguing, or a dog barking, or too much car, things that we can't control, but it's there. So what are we going to do about it, right? We have to accept it and be kind to it, right? And another thing is to see reality as it is, to reduce what we call noise down to bare basic, which is sound, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, it's just sound wave hitting our eardrum. So when we keep reminding ourselves that this is sound, just sound, it's just like any other sound, right? Then we're able to leave the sound alone. The same thing with our earworm. Now, thoughts, earworm is a certain rhythm of thoughts that is music, but it's not ours to control, right? So in the mind world, we understand the physical world, but we don't understand the mind world. We're not in control of the mind world, and we thought that anything that happened in our mind is ours and is our world. It's actually not. It's a shared world, right? Shared world with other people. That's why if we think something and have an idea, another person would think and have the same idea, because it's the same world, right? It's the same mind world. So all these thoughts and eardrums, we thought that we can control it, and so we really resist. We want it to not be there. So, but again, we reduce it down to the bare reality. And what is thought? It's just a series of patterns of energy, you can say, mind. Um, uh, and so we just leave it be, right? In leaving it be, it's just like the impermanence of anything. It will eventually passes, right? So in this journey is so much about taking a step back and just being more and more of an observer, more and more of a watcher, and not react.
Mm-hmm.
So when things like this happen, it just gives us an opportunity to practice, to get stronger.
Yeah, that's right. So if it is not too strong, I would say, like, because like, I totally relate to what you say, and I feel you there. Um, just with the example of the, well, with self chatter and earworms, it seems like they're both right. They're both happening in the mind, and well, it is the case. They're both happening in the mind, but they have like different sort of results in the mind, I would say. So with the self chatter is basically how we're define our reality, right? So because of the critical self chatter and commenting and labeling and assessing and judging about everything we experience with our five senses and in the mind, and then we continue thinking that and judging about that, assessing this and that, and we think that's real, so we become that reality, and so we identify with it. So uh, yeah, so it's basically what you say, like with that focus and our attention, we feed these patterns, and then it becomes the main thinking, and then becomes a mindset, and then it becomes our reality and our personality and whatever. So with earworms, it's a difficult thing. It's a different thing because it is something so the mind never stops, like the thought train never stops, right? So you cannot change that. With earworms though is like I personally, I have lots of experiences with that. I would call it parasite. I don't want to label it and be negative about it. It's just, for me, it was all the years, it was a parasite, right? Like yeah, I went to the most peaceful places, and it was just, birds and nature and wind, and everything was beautiful, but my head wouldn't stop and wouldn't adjust and tune into this beauty and the silence of nature. So it for me, it really became like a, yeah, parasite, or like a disease, because it would never stop. Like, it would never give me a moment of silence and peace. And especially if you want to meditate, and you sort of want to dive into the peace and the stillness and the harmony, and then there's whatever earworms. My head felt like a jukebox, right? Like a radio station, and it would just really, like, because I'm quite a creative person, and I used to do music. I used to listen to music, used to write songs and all that. So everything, whatever a person just say a word, in my head would go into um, the songs where this word is being sung, right? Like in all the different songs, whatever, rock, pop, hip hop, I don't know, everything. So for me, it was really hard, and it became that far that I had an accident one day where I sort of I I used the coffee machine wrongly in nature. So I was there for, like, I don't know, 6 weeks, and I used the coffee machine wrong, and then all the hot water sort of melted my fingers together. So yeah, I poured it over, and then it melted my fingers together, and it was really strong pain. But the first thing what my mind does is like the song, I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my bones. you know, and my hair would my hair would just go. I don't know. Even though it was super strong pain, it would not stop. So that's why I call it a disease, like a parasite, which in, and yeah, and I had massive ill will towards it. Seriously, I was like, yeah, it's not supposed to be that way, and stop it and all that, and I can't stop thinking about songs. And like, I even when I was walking, you know, first I walk fast, and then I realized, okay, there's the earworm having that beat, you know, at the moment when my feet comes up and the next beat comes up, I'm like, okay, I'm slowing down. Okay, so the melody in my head would adjust to the slowing down. It was hopeless. It was hopeless. So yeah, I can totally relate to this earworm scenario. It's really hard, though. To give it kindness is really hard. I tried that, but I knew it was not real kindness.
Well, we talk about be careful of how we perceive it or labeling it, right? So number one, labeling it as parasite or disease is just going to make it worse, because from that negative labeling, we go into resistance, right? So instead of saying disease or parasite, like maybe say, hello, old friend, nice to see you again. Okay.
Yeah.
Because what happened is, I think earworm tends to occur for people who is more musical inclined, like they love music, they've created music, they have in the past really dwelled into music and take it as their passion, their hobby, their pleasure, right? So for many years you have created this pattern, right?
Mm-hmm.
You condition yourself that it is happiness to you. And just because you decided now that it is not happiness anymore, it doesn't your
It won't stop. Yeah.
your condition doesn't listen to that. The energy just go according to its momentum. And another thing, what happened in when we are on retreat and in a very silent environment, is that things amplified, right? So our issues amplified, our neurotic amplified, our paranoia amplified, our earworm amplified. Things tend to amplify. It's not because of the surrounding condition. What happened is, in that situation, you don't have the normal distraction that distracted you or kept your attention, right, and keep you busy. Because when you are in the bush or in nature, and especially on retreat, majority of the distraction has been taken away from you, because that's what retreat means, right? It's just a place to temporary take a break from everything, right? And that's include take a break from your distraction. So when you have nothing to distract your attention from, then you would be more focused on what really happening in your mind, which
Yeah.
already existed and happening. It's just that you don't notice it when you are being busy, right? It's just that on retreat, it gives you an opportunity to have a look what's really there, right? So, yeah. Uh, um, so just recognize that I am responsible. I am responsible for this this earworm happening, right? So take ownership, and instead of saying, disease, just recognize it as something you've seen it before and seen it a lot of times. So it become kind of like old friend, right? For me, it's boredom, right? Every time I sit and meditate, and I'll sit and meditate for a long, long time, talking about like 6, 7, 8 hours in one go, and you get a lot of boredom, right? But every time boredom come, I was like, hello, I know you, right? And you just relax, accept, and continue.
Yeah,
So the
yeah,
same thing with anything that is our current program or our current conditioning. Um, yeah, you just have to take a kind attitude to it, because
yeah. It's,
when we are kind to anything, right, to our own conditioning, to our own karma, to the floor, to the table, right? When we develop that kind attitude into relationship to everything, then there is less resistance.
yes, yes. Well, back then I had, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have this sort of tools, or I didn't use that tools of patience, right? Because, as you say, I did condition myself to that point, because the the result in the present moment, which is the earworm, has been conditioned and brought alive in the past. And then of course, I see, okay, I have the intention to calm down, to meditate, and to go deeper in my practice, but of course it did not happen, and there's no distraction. So the only distraction happening in the mind, and the amplify, as you say, it gets stronger, it gets bigger, it exaggerate, it occupy in the mind. um, so, and of course, and I think that's for many people, actually, that's an issue, the impatience, right? Because we set an aim and we want something, and we don't want to experience the hindrances and obstacles which stand in the way in order to follow the path of what we actually want to achieve now. Like, we change our mind, and we're going in another way, but of course past is still still with us. So I had restlessness, impatience, and ill will, like anger also towards it. And yes, it did not make it better. So I can tell that you're right from my own experience. And well, I think forgiveness and compassion would have sort of let it let it fade away more easy. So yeah, I don't know if I would have started to dance to the tunes then of my head, that would be another extreme, right? So that would not. So I would entertain even those things, right? So yeah, it was hard and it's always very interesting. The Buddha very often mentioned and emphasized the middle way, and actually that is again the middle way. Of like abiding by obstacles we're having, and overcoming them by just watching them, and sort of try to use our tools we have and we know about, in order to small and yeah reduce that hindrance and obstacle. Yeah.
Mm. Um, yeah, that's earworm, but also watch out. I experience a lot of people with very negative self critiques, self chatter. Their inner dialogue with themselves is so critical that that it generates that. I think it comes to the point where the person identify with it, right? Because they told themselves so long, and they reaffirm themselves, reaffirm. It's like a mantra, right? So it become their reality. So what happened when thing is their reality is that people would sabotage um, positive happening in their life, so that it reaffirmed to them that they are the negativity that they felt, not knowing that they are the one that create this reality. So it's yeah, we can go to the psychoanalysis of it, but that's just touching it, why it's so important that the moment we notice a negative self-labeling, we need to stop straight away, right? We need to not feed that pattern, because we will create reality where we will confirm to ourselves we are that. So when I see people see themselves as worthless, as this and that, it's it's something that we can control. But because the pattern being maintained for so long, then it would also quite hard in the beginning to shift. But if we persist, we can shift.
Yeah, it's with the I totally agree. Like and with this self-chattering, actually, most of the time it's really like fault finding and negative if we think about that, right? So everyone can check for themselves if it's a positive or negative mindset or like self-chatter you're having, or commenting and labeling you're having. So what is your main focus? Is it positive or is it negative? Is it on the good things happening or is it on the faults happening? Is it justifying and defending, or is it attacking, or is it yeah? And actually it's interesting because we have a certain version or an idea of things which are supposed to be this way, which are supposed to be that way, and if that's not according to what we got in mind, then the self-chattering actually starts. And yeah, it's I know that for myself, that it's actually really like beating yourself up attitude, as it would bring you some benefits, but it doesn't, right? It does not bring you any benefits to beat yourself up, to sabotage, to manipulate the moment, and that this negativity is not helping you in any way. And of course you can go into the psychoanalysis where it's coming from, right? So saying that, but the voice in your head, this is your voice, or is it the voice of your parents or your teacher or the sports trainer yelling at you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's irrelevant really to
Mm.
identify whose voice it is, because that's not the purpose. The purpose is, again, if we bring our mindfulness into the body, and it is the feeling that would tell us whether we are, do we want it or not, right? So all this negativity would generate quite an unpleasant feeling, right? And then we have to ask ourselves, do we want this feeling? Do we want this mindset, right? And if the person realizes, oh, I really like it, actually I want it more, right? So then the next question is why, right? Why do we want suffering? Why do we want pain, right? So it's very much a self-awareness journey where they can keep asking that why and have a look. But if the person come back to their body and realize, wow, I'm generating this mindset and this feeling, I don't like it, then the person will shift. Will have the motivation to shift their focus and not dwell in it. But then if you if you like your suffering and you dwell in your suffering, then the next question to ask is why.
Yes, and I think it's great to know that for yourself, as you can be sort of a it's not the aim. I mean, that's what the bodhisattvas are doing. But it's a great to be a role model of positivity, right? So you might, through being a passive sort of example of how you can see and treat and assess the world around you, if you do that with an awareness and positivity, it's quite interesting because many people just do not know that there's another way of, if something goes wrong, you not immediately goes and say, I'm a failure and I'm so stupid and I always was stupid and I always will be stupid. So there's this way of, say, okay, that went wrong, okay, fine. you know Never mind. So things like
mm,
that. So it's great,
mm,
if people go that way and be a positive role model in order to
mm.
be a light in
Well,
the world, actually.
well, remember, every obstacle, every failure is an opportunity to learn.
Mm.
So the more you fail, the more you learn, right? So there's a saying that the master is a master for reason because they fail more than you do. So you need to fail
That's
more, some more.
Yes, that's great. I didn't know that one. That's a good one, actually. Yeah.
They don't become a master by being like oh so successful all the time, right? They're being a master because they failed so much, so long.
Yes, that's fantastic. Yeah, I'll, I'll remember that. Um,
Okay, so
yeah,
we're
amazing.
coming to the end, and yeah, it's been nice talking to you, and yeah, we'll see you guys all next time again. Bye.
Yes. Bye bye.